Aita for not having an official job, and not learning the native language in a foreign country. There is a lot to unpack here, so please bear with me. I am a 35-year-old male who went to Germany for the first time to be with my now wife, a 33-year-old female, in 2017. At first, this arrangement was not intended to be permanent. I would go for 3 months, then return to the United States for 3 months since we were just dating and not ready to cohabitate yet. In 2018, I accepted an offer to study in the United Kingdom, even though I was also accepted at the local university in her city. Both were good schools, but the university in the United Kingdom was far more prestigious, so she suggested I study there instead. We continued to travel back and forth until I graduated, just before the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, shutting everything down and forcing me to return to America temporarily. Unfortunately, we were also planning to get married later that year, but large gatherings were not allowed, so we had to postpone the ceremony. Throughout this entire time, I was providing her with financial support, as fairly early on I encouraged her to quit her minimum wage jobs to focus on her studies. Given her current progress, she would graduate at 29, having spent over 10 years in school. During this time, I made approximately $100,000 per year through streaming and tournaments. After my graduation, while I was in America, I began to phase out my gaming career and started a logistics firm that paid roughly the same amount. At the end of 2021, we abandoned our plans for a big wedding and simply got married with a few witnesses at a courthouse in Germany, allowing me to live there. I suppose you could say this was when I officially started living in Germany, but due to the nature of my company, I still spent over half a year overseas on business. I believe that after one such trip in late 2022, things really began to fall apart in our marriage. I was hospitalized for a few days, and it looked rather bleak to the point where I called her to say goodbye. I found the entire conversation strange, as she seemed to be trying very hard to end the video call and eventually did so quite abruptly. After about a week, it turned out I was stable enough to fly back to Germany and continue my treatment, so I did. At this point, I was recovering at home, but I noticed something was wrong. She was cold and distant, showing no concern. I asked her if there was someone else, and she replied affirmatively. I told her that I believed she needed to make a choice. She responded, "I choose myself," which struck me as particularly callous. Later that day, during a Christmas party, she whispered to me that she had kissed another person, but that it hadn't gone any further. I am not sure I believe her to this day, but I couldn't react at the moment because we were surrounded by her friends. After everyone left, we discussed it, and I suppose it did not go well because I started to feel unwell physically and asked her to call an ambulance. I remember it clearly. She was humming and hanging clothes and did not call until I texted a mutual friend, who is a doctor, asking whether I should call the ambulance. When I was discharged from the hospital several weeks later, she kept bringing up the idea of having an open relationship. She has always had intimacy issues due to past trauma. She said that I had taught her how to love, and now she wanted to experience having sexual relationships with other people since she had never been able to do so without negative emotions until now. I was quite opposed to the idea, but after a month of back and forth, I eventually conceded. I insisted that we draft a contract together, which we did. The main sticking point was that we were each other's primary partners, and everyone else would be there solely for physical comfort. She gave me an entire lecture to temper my expectations and advised me not to feel jealous, as she claimed she never does. She used to be a professional ballerina and still gets modeling gigs, stating that women are typically more selective and men do not get as many opportunities. That may be true, but it did not turn out that way in our relationship. I asked someone ironically my German tutor out later that day, and I secured a date almost immediately. The open relationship lasted for 6 months. I saw 3 women regularly and had what I believe were some one-night stands, but I cannot recall clearly. To be honest, being with other people felt much better and more carefree. I went on trips with them, and we had a great time. Eventually, I stopped, as I realized that it was not for me. I did not want to sleep around and found myself gravitating towards one person at a time. I did not want to break the contract we had written, so I informed my wife that the open relationship had come to an end. She contemplated ending our relationship, but ultimately chose to stay. However, Things continued to be rather strange, and I was fed up with the lies, so one day I went through her phone. I discovered that she primarily wanted the open relationship with the man she had kissed earlier and had not made an effort to be with anyone else, clearly violating our contract. They often spoke negatively about me, even discussing intimate situations. For instance, there was a time when I honestly was not in the mood for sex, but when I communicated this, she became annoyed and forced me down, continuing until she finished. That behavior always unsettled me, and I told her as much on one occasion. She immediately conveyed my feelings to him, and they spent the next 30 minutes messaging about how it was wrong of me to make her feel like the aggressor. I believe the worst part was that the call logs indicated several long video calls during the week I was overseas in the hospital. I checked, and they coincided perfectly with the times she was hurrying to end our conversation. It turned out she had her sights set on this man for quite some time. Moreover, she has said things to me like, "He was an army sniper. He could easily defeat you." When I pointed out that he is disabled and can barely walk now, she replied, "He could just shoot you from a distance. You would never see it coming." I found the whole situation rather juvenile, but honestly, part of me wanted to confront him. I had prior experience as a bouncer, held a black belt in taekwondo, and was involved in powerlifting, so I believed I could likely take someone several weight classes lighter than me. However, I do not understand why she felt the need to question my masculinity in that manner. I am unsure how to respond to it, to be honest. In early 2024, my firm went under. This was when I started living in Germany full-time. By this point, I had already completed several standardized tests and courses in German, but my language skills were not sufficient to hold a conversation with others. I can generally understand, but I speak with considerable grammatical errors. She, along with many other people here including friends and my mother-in-law, has criticized me for not being fluent in German. I am often labeled lazy, which I believe to be quite unfair given that I have been working hard to support my wife for all these years. Eventually, I became so frustrated with the situation that I insisted we separate our finances. While I am no longer skilled enough to compete professionally, I still have a name for myself and coach or cast, earning about $2,500 per month. However, it is not an official job and does not offer promising future opportunities. I am primarily focused on this rather than enrolling in German courses because of the status of my relationship with my wife. We frequently block each other and frequently mention divorce. We do not even live in the same place much of the time. Some days we are fine, but the arguments seem to arise from nowhere and appear unavoidable. The only reason I have not left Germany yet is that I need to complete my treatment here before returning to the United States. After that, a 1-year mandatory separation period begins before a divorce can be filed. As for my wife's current situation, she is about to complete her master's degree this year after 15 years of study and will finally begin earning decent salaries, which means she will out-earn me for the first time in our relationship. She also inherited a house from her family, who stipulated in their will that it will, under no circumstances, belong to me. That stipulation was found to be illegal and will only be upheld if I sign a prenuptial agreement, which my wife is urging me to do. The irony is lost on her. When we were having relationship issues, and I was the one providing for her, she stated that she would pursue every cent that I owed her if we divorced. Nevertheless, I am tempted just to sign it so I can move on quickly and end everything. Despite all of this, she constantly approaches me and attempts to reconcile, promising she will work on things only to later discuss divorce over trivial matters that escalate uncontrollably. On this Valentine's Day, I told her that if she wanted me to make these changes, I needed a genuine commitment from her. She agreed, yet within half a week, she had mentioned separating twice and blocked me once. It has been a continuous cycle of behavior, alongside casual conversations about future children, which I am not considering at the moment, future houses, and our life together the following day as if nothing had occurred. It is infuriating, and I have essentially focused on leaving the country for good as soon as I can. I realize I may receive criticism for taking advantage of the social benefits here, but it truly is not like that. I want to mention that I have always paid my taxes in Germany, and in fact, due to the nature of my job as a business owner, I pay significantly more in taxes for healthcare than a salaried employee would, as employers contribute heavily to health insurance taxes. Additionally, the German government has overcharged me several thousand euros in taxes they have refused to return, even after being contacted by a tax attorney regarding healthcare. So, am I in the wrong? Am I at fault for not learning German any longer and not pursuing a career in Germany? To summarize, I am not making any effort to learn German or advance my career in Germany because I constantly feel that my marriage is destined to end, and I will return to the United States. Story 2. From best friends to strangers. After 15 years, a new boyfriend drove a wedge between us. She wanted him at my elopement, ignoring my boundaries, and when I said no, she demanded I join her wedding plans. Is this the end of our friendship forever? So, this story involves a bit of friendship drama and a bit of bridezilla drama, but I have been reading Reddit stories for a long time and wanted to share my own experience. Apologies for the length. Some background first. My best friend of 15 years and I, both female and in our 30s, met in college when we were randomly assigned to the same freshman dorm, and we have been inseparable ever since. I am referring to this woman as my person. We did so much together, supported each other during significant milestones, and maintained a strong friendship even after I moved out of the state several years ago. I have always felt that our friendship was genuinely balanced, with neither of us exerting more or less effort than the other. I even assisted her in planning for several months and executing her escape from her abusive ex-husband, and was one of only a couple of people entrusted with this information prior to her departure. We were extremely close. My husband and I eloped in our state last summer, for which we had been planning for 17 months. Due to complications with my family, we chose to elope with only ourselves and our photographer, no family or friends, to avoid drama. I had a bachelorette party with my friends a month before the wedding to ensure they could still be involved. About 4 months before the wedding, my friend reached out and asked if she could join us for the elopement. In her words, "It makes me really sad to think of you getting ready for your wedding alone." My now husband is a very shy man, but had gotten to know her well over the years and felt comfortable with her joining us. Aside from us, she would be the only other person in attendance. To me, this was an extraordinary gesture of friendship, as she would need to fly in and incur expenses, which did not concern her, for which I was immensely grateful. However, about 2 weeks after she offered to join us and we agreed, she began dating a new guy whom she was really into. After her horrendous experience with her first husband, they are now divorced. I was thrilled for her that she had met someone as wonderful as she was. This is when the drama began. Initially, she asked if her new boyfriend could attend the wedding with her. They had only been dating for 2 weeks at that point. My husband and I discussed it, and he felt very uncomfortable with having a stranger join us. I conveyed this to my friend, stating, "No, it's nothing against him. We just do not want a stranger at our wedding on such short notice." We had planned to do activities like getting our nails done the day before the wedding, which would leave my husband entertaining a stranger. She responded, "Well, he doesn't have to join us for anything as a group," which felt uncomfortable since we are the type of people who would not want someone to feel excluded when they are meeting us for the first time, especially as the partner of my best friend. It isn't that we never wanted to meet him, we just preferred not to do it the last minute before our wedding. Her next remark was, "Well, you cannot tell people they cannot fly to your state," which is technically true, but felt like an excuse for violating a clearly stated boundary. Nonetheless, this initiated the only argument we have ever experienced in 15 years of friendship. She believed I wanted her to be alone in my state, which was strange because she was fine with it before she met the guy, and thought I was being unreasonable. She made plans and purchased plane tickets for both of them, despite me communicating mine and my husband's feelings multiple times. During this period, she and her new boyfriend became engaged after dating for less than 4 weeks. I maintained my position that we were not comfortable with him coming up to meet us at that time. She disclosed that she and her now fiancé had made plans to elope 4 days after us in a different state, and they intended to fly there directly after our wedding concluded. She wanted our nail appointment and the other activities leading up to the wedding to be joint celebrations for their upcoming wedding as well. Mind you, she had not consulted me about how I or my husband felt regarding this before making her own plans, and was very upset that I did not respond as she expected. Instead of emitting excitement, as she anticipated, about being able to celebrate both our weddings simultaneously, I was stunned and, frankly, very upset that she was commandeering our wedding. If she had discussed her plans with me before making such a decision, I think I would have reacted differently, but it felt so disrespectful to make arrangements that affected my husband and me without consulting us. I wrote her a lengthy message explaining how disrespectful this felt, and asked why she seemed willing to jeopardize our 15-year friendship over a man who was unknown to anyone just 6 weeks prior. By this point, there had been numerous conversations about her disregarding my feelings regarding having her boyfriend come along, and now about how peculiar it was that they were getting married so close to our wedding date. My husband even suggested we move the wedding date or location to avoid the drama because it was stressing him out. This was his wedding too, which broke my heart. I ended up telling her not to come at all and informed her that she was no longer welcome. We did not speak much for 2 months, during which she canceled my bachelorette party 4 days before it was scheduled. I never received an apology or acknowledgement of her actions throughout any of this. My other extraordinary friend from elementary school ended up coming to our wedding when she noticed how stressed and upset I was about everything. I am eternally grateful for her support. Fast forward about 3 months. Our wedding and honeymoon are over. My friend, the one who indeed got married 4 days after us, reached out, asking if I would be the maid of honor in her wedding scheduled for the following year. You see, their parents are not well physically and were unable to attend the elopement, so they are organizing a second, larger wedding for their family in their home state. I explicitly asked if she was sure she wanted me to be the maid of honor after everything that had transpired earlier that year, and she confirmed that she was. Despite some reservations, I accepted because I wanted her to have an amazing wedding and genuinely valued our friendship. While I was maid of honor, she continually expressed how overwhelmed she felt with everything, so I strove to alleviate her burden. I researched all the photographers in the area and created a spreadsheet containing their pricing, contact information, and availability. I also compiled similar information regarding local hotels within her budget. This required a significant amount of time and effort, but I was happy to assist. During this time, I coordinated with the other bridesmaids to order snacks vegan, I might add, for her wedding dress shopping experience, which I attended remotely after working a 12-hour night shift. I had also planned and booked her bachelorette party. Everything seemed to be going well. She appeared happy and had never indicated otherwise. Then came the "we need to talk" text. It was an ordinary Wednesday. We had just had a bridesmaid meeting over Teams 2 days earlier, and all seemed fine. When we got on the phone, she informed me that she no longer wanted me to be the maid of honor. To say I was blindsided would be an understatement. She told me one of the other bridesmaids had agreed to take on the title. I was obviously hurt, but she is the bride, so I simply said, "Okay, if that is what you truly want." She then added, "But you can still attend the wedding if you want." I froze and then asked, "So what you are really saying is that I am no longer part of the bridal party?" She never explicitly stated that, just that someone else was going to be the maid of honor, and her reply was simply correct. She did not even have the courage to tell me that I was removed from the bridal party entirely. I had to ask directly. In an instant, I went from maid of honor to guest. Her reasons, you ask. I have felt out of sync with you for a while now. You were making me feel pressured to do things for the wedding before I was ready. I asked her why she never mentioned anything to me if my assistance was not what she wanted or needed. She simply said, "I didn't think it would help." I then questioned why she did not just demote me to a regular bridesmaid if she disliked the way I was handling things. I have experience being both a maid of honor and a bridesmaid and understand how to fulfill both roles. In my experience as a regular bridesmaid, I would not be responsible for planning anything unless the new maid of honor or bride explicitly asked me to. Her response was again, "I didn't think it would help." This was the last straw. After everything that happened over the last year, I was finished. I was not going to continue putting myself in a position to be hurt by her, and it was clear she did not care about my opinions, thoughts, or feelings. I told her not to contact me again, and I blocked her on all platforms after that call. Needless to say, I will not be attending her wedding. None of my other friends appeared surprised by any of the events above, so perhaps she had been acting this way for some time, and I simply failed to notice. As a side note, remember how her first wedding was 4 days after our wedding? Well, her other wedding is going to take place 3 days after my birthday. Even my husband, who dislikes drama, asked if I thought this was intentional. As a second side note, I am friends with one of the other bridesmaids independently of her wedding, and apparently, my friend has been telling everyone else that the only reason we had a dispute around my wedding was that I did not like that she was also getting married so near to our date. This indicates she neither listened to nor understood anything I conveyed to her regarding that situation. I sincerely hope it is just a coincidence that she met her now husband and subsequently began behaving poorly. Thank you, everyone, for reading. It feels good to express this. Story 3. Navigating a turbulent relationship since 2019, I faced cultural clashes, infidelity, and toxic communication. After a painful breakup, I tried reconnecting, but the same issues resurfaced. After rediscovering myself, why am I still questioning my feelings for him? Buckle up, we started dating in 2019 and were absolutely inseparable. Within the first 6 months, we were living together and felt very comfortable being ourselves. We cried, fought, and shared a lot about ourselves. We are both 29 years old. He is Trinidadian, and I am a Black and Puerto Rican woman raised mainly in Alabama. We have many cultural differences that lie beneath the surface because he is a first-generation American, and his family primarily practices East Indian traditions and identifies with that. My partner, on the other hand, grew up in a metropolitan city and wanted to relate to his surroundings, so he adapted a more urban lifestyle and persona. We often disagreed about culture, finances, respect. Literally anything was debatable. This became exhausting after a while. Fast forward, problems arose when I noticed that he had not introduced me to his family, while he met mine and honestly did not want to stay away from them. I began to feel indifferent due to the things he shared with me about how his family viewed Black people and certain stereotypes that I fit into. One day before he left to visit his family, I explicitly asked him if he was ashamed of me and whether they were racist, as I could not understand why he had yet to introduce me. He tried to assure me that wasn't the case, but I knew that to be untrue based on everything he had told me. One day, I began snooping through a device and discovered that while he was in Trinidad, he was messaging multiple women from his past. I was furious because I literally stayed up all night crying the first night he was gone, as we had not been apart since getting together. I felt so naive and hurt. I confronted him about it, and we stayed together. During our first year together, I held multiple sales jobs, but I wanted something that could become a career, so I applied at various dealerships for roles ranging from office clerks to janitorial staff. I was interviewed and hired on the spot for a sales position. I entered the role and enjoyed every moment of that lifestyle. However, our relationship was rapidly deteriorating. The arguments were non-stop every single day. We could not be around others together because they knew we could not communicate healthily. It always led to fights. I have taken accountability for my part in the turmoil of that relationship, but he has yet to accept any responsibility for how we arrived at this point. To hear him tell it, everything is my fault, or at least his version suggests that. I was 100% faithful and in love with him, and despite all the red flags and toxicity, I still wanted to be with him. Our sex life was great. I accepted him and his body because I was in love, and I enjoyed intimacy with him. Our only major issue was communication, as he refused to compromise during arguments. It was his way or no way. He always believed he was right. He would fabricate and embellish things for his benefit. I thought I was with an active duty soldier, but he never revealed that he was actually a reservist. He would identify as Black, even though not a single person in his family identifies as Black or of African descent. Those are just 2 big lies that I will confront him about, and I know he dislikes that, but he shouldn't lie and try to make himself appear better to others while I am right here. Fast forward, I discovered he was texting and maintaining a secret relationship with a woman in his phone, with messages that had continued from before I entered his life. I addressed the images and texts I saw. The message thread was muted, making it clear that this was intentional and secretive. I ended things right then and there. A month later, on my birthday, he attempted to gift me necklaces via my son after this dispute. I accepted them, but shortly after he realized I was serious about not being with him, he began to throw his gifts and actions in my face. Consequently, I returned the necklaces to him and went to the jeweler to purchase the exact ones for myself. He refused to move out of my home, so I began staying anywhere but my sister's house, friends' places, and driving around for hours. He would act out, claiming I was wronging him, but I simply did not want to be in the same bed as him. He refused to leave, and whenever I was in bed, he would touch me, initiating arguments when I told him I did not want him there. His excuse was that his parents were dealing with post-COVID issues. Why did I care when I had only met them twice? The shutdown felt endless. When his birthday came, I had to pretend we were together because he didn't tell his family we were no longer a couple. I reluctantly agreed to go to his parents' house for his birthday dinner, and as we were leaving, he yelled at me about being a young man needing his needs met, using vulgar language. At that point, I had no interest in being intimate or even sharing a bed with him. I despised him, so I let him have it. I told him that I did not want to perform certain acts. I was not going to do it. He could ask the girl he had been getting explicit images from to do that. I informed him that I was not sexually satisfied. I only experienced pleasure because I was in love, and now that the love was gone, so was the pleasure. I mentioned his size, stating that he was better at pleasing me orally than physically. I said many emasculating and hurtful things, but I was so done. I moved on with a coworker. Our relationship developed quickly, as we were always together at work and afterward. My ex began stalking me, and I hadn't even realized it until my mother helped me notice. Yes, my mom. He was taking photos of cars outside my home, climbing up my patio to take pictures of my bedroom and who was in my bed, and even broke into my bedroom through a window. It became terrifying, and he refused to recognize how unsettling that situation was for anyone, especially someone diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and OCD. He was relentless and would not stay away. My family maintained contact with him. My mother and I rarely spoke or visited each other because she literally made a choice, and it was not me. My sister would disparage me to him, claiming he was too good for me and advising him to walk away. I disconnected myself from all of them for a few years, but eventually ended up in contact with him again. For my birthday, he threw me a surprise party and gifted me the Louis Vuitton purse I had been eyeing. It was lovely, but we were no longer in a relationship, and I made that very clear. Anything he did for me was purely out of his desire, and I knew he had different motives. I have been single for 2 to 3 years. I have been casually dating and enjoying my life. I have some explicit content in my phone and other items that I did not hide, as all these things occurred while he was out of my life. In December 2024, he messaged me, and we reconnected. We talked about boundaries and our expectations, and although I was hesitant, I decided to give it another try with an open mind and heart. Everything was fine for about 2 weeks, then he started pressuring me for sex. I felt uneasy due to the things I had previously expressed and how I felt. Those feelings have not changed. Honestly, I am particular about size. I did not develop a sudden aversion to intimacy. It was not something unnoticed. I liked him a lot and enjoyed the time we spent together, and I wanted to see where things could lead. I knew I could accept a partner of a smaller size if all my other criteria were met. I eventually gave in, and we had sex. Afterward, he became overly indulgent, which is problematic for me because I dislike feeling overly sexualized by men. I have expressed this for years, but he did not care or acknowledge it. There was always some crude remark about sex, and he had never behaved like this before, making it extremely cringeworthy and unattractive. His comments made my skin crawl. He knows this because of my reactions, yet he continues to make inappropriate remarks about sex 80 of the time we are talking. The other 20 he spends arguing with me. Returning to the matter of the content on my phone, he began to make certain comments and compare himself to others in ways that confused me until he mentioned the videos and images. I immediately felt furious, as I wondered why he would take images and videos from my phone, send them to himself, and then criticize me for actions I took while I was not even with him at the time. I do not understand a man who compares himself to other men and becomes so obsessed with what another man has done to a woman. particularly when I was not involved with either of them. His behavior is controlling, obsessive, and quite odd to me. This has been the most upsetting aspect of our situation. He takes my videos and images and retains them on his phone as if it is not him in the video or picture, yet he seeks ownership over something in which he has had zero involvement. I cannot comprehend that for the life of me. This is the brief version of our history together, beginning in January 2019. Saying all of that to say this: am I the asshole for not being equally interested in him? Am I the asshole for being annoyed by the excessive sexual comments? By him in general, as he remains the same exact person he was, fixated on the same issues, with constant complaining and bickering. I am unsure how I even got myself into this situation, and I do not know how to improve it without the resolution becoming that I have transitioned into a human sex doll I refuse. Story 4. I yelled at my friend for not joining a protest, apologized, and he accused me of manipulation. Now he thinks I took him a scammer. I apologize if any of you have encountered this in Am I the Asshole, but I am not particularly skilled at social media. I was unaware that this subreddit existed, so I believe this story may be a better fit here. I am trying again and would genuinely appreciate any feedback. Summary: I overreacted to my friend's refusal to attend a protest with me, and after I apologized, he referred to me as a manipulative scam artist. Background and context: this situation involves myself, 46, female, and my friend, 43, male, whom we can refer to as Jimmy. My disabilities were present from birth and include numerous physical deformities along with secondary issues caused by the primary ones. I managed to work for several years until chronic pain terminated that, and now I receive Social Security disability insurance. Although Jimmy is technically more able-bodied than I am, he has spent a significant portion of his life homeless. His life changed after he was struck by a truck, which resulted in leg injuries, chronic pain, and also living on Social Security disability insurance. This detail is pertinent because his circumstances are often dismissed by conservatives who might say, "You should just work," and cut him off. My Social Security disability insurance benefits exceed his by more than 3 times because I had prior employment. We have been friends for around 4 years. We attempted a romantic relationship, but it did not work out because he is still emotionally attached to a woman who left him a decade ago and is convinced she will eventually return, partly due to her daily communications assuring him of her affection while she lives with another man across the country. I dislike her immensely. To help him financially, I added him to my cell phone plan and provided him with a complimentary phone from Verizon. He contributes his share of the bill every month, slightly exceeding the actual amount to create a round figure, something he suggested. This detail will become significant later. The term free phone refers to the arrangement with Verizon whereby you pay a monthly fee and receive a promotional credit until the phone is paid off over 3 years, ultimately making the device cost nothing. I also designated him as the account manager, granting him full legal authority over his plan without needing my assistance, essentially treating him as if he were the account holder. Additionally, I routinely purchase groceries for him, and due to his allergies, his food costs are higher than average. Both dairy and gluten are hazardous for him. I also drive him to various places, whether for doctor appointments, hobbies, shopping, or visiting other friends. I provide similar assistance to an elderly neighbor of mine for the same reasons. I happen to have a slightly more favorable financial situation than either of them and believe in helping when one is able. While I may have emotional feelings for Jimmy, I am always cautious not to use my assistance as leverage. I do these things out of choice and do not expect anything in return. Since the election, I have been feeling increasingly anxious because authoritarian regimes are not known for treating disabled individuals well. The plane crash over Washington, D.C. occurred, and then Trump appeared on television discussing diversity, equity, and inclusion while openly mentioning disabilities such as missing limbs, partial paralysis, and dwarfism, some of which apply to me with disdain. Following that, RFK suggested that individuals needing medication should possibly be placed in rural wellness camps where they could work in fields while recovering, which sounds alarmingly similar to forced labor camps for disabled people. The discourse surrounding disability is real and frightens me. Essentially, I have become radicalized. The incident. I informed Jimmy that I planned to attend a protest and inquired if he wanted to join me. A simple refusal would not have upset me. However, he replied, "I don't get involved in politics." I reacted strongly, saying, "What? Politics affect you whether you like it or not. What will you do if they cut off your social security?" To which he responded, "I guess I will just die." I then hung up on him. My actual words were more profane, as I was quite agitated. I recognized that this part was indeed my overreaction. We did not communicate for 2 weeks. I felt remorseful, alternating between believing that an action could indeed harm us and acknowledging that it was not right for me to bully him. So I chose to remain silent, as if that could resolve anything. Finally, I received a message stating that he was leaving my phone plan. Given that I previously worked for Verizon, I understood the financial implications for him. 1A. He may have to pay off the remaining balance on the phone, or 1B. He would lose the free promotion, resulting in monthly payments for the device on his new account. 2. A plan for an individual is roughly double the cost of being part of a multiple-line plan. And 3. Initiating a new account typically entails a hefty initial bill, often covering more than a month of service. In short, my anger and stubbornness could lead to severe consequences for his life and well-being. As for me, the financial impact would be negligible. I still have my neighbor, another friend, my adult child, and myself on the account, which means my own costs remain low. I panicked. This situation was absurd and more critical to me than my embarrassment over raising my voice. Therefore, I went to visit him in person and apologized for my unacceptable behavior regarding the protest. I explained that I had crossed a line and should never have yelled at him like that. I admitted I had been struggling since the election, but that did not excuse my conduct. Jimmy responded by stating that, "Now I only care when it affects my finances." He accused me of attempting to manipulate him into attending the protest. I am unsure whether my anger constituted manipulation, but I clarified that was not my intention, and I regretted that was the impact it had on him. I never meant for that to happen. To summarize this part, he then claimed that I had lied to him about the remaining balance on his phone payments. He mentioned asking me about the balance a month prior, and although I quoted him a specific dollar amount, Verizon informed him that it was less. The phone, which he receives for free and for which I do not charge him, led him to believe that I might be benefiting from this arrangement, and he perceived that I was somehow exploiting him. I sat there as he accused me of being a manipulative thief. My only response was to remind him that every time he inquired about his phone, I consistently checked the account and relayed the details to him. I expressed that I couldn't recall the last time we discussed it, but assured him that I always verified the information. I wanted to mention all the money I had spent on him over the years, but feared it would sound too much like a demand for reciprocity, which I detest. That has never been my motive for helping him. Consequently, I kept that thought to myself. I returned home with him still upset with me, and he subsequently blocked my number and my social media accounts. Then, 2 days later, I received a text from him. It simply stated, "I am no longer angry, and I apologize for my behavior as well." That was the entirety of the message. I am unsure how to interpret this or how to respond. I spent 2 days grappling with the situation, coming to terms with the fact that he believed I was scamming him. My thoughts have fluctuated between maybe he has been using me the entire time and perhaps I am simply being petty. Am I genuinely being petty? Should I ask him to clarify his perspective? Should I dismiss it as merely an angry exchange? Or should I interpret it as a sign that he does not value our friendship? I struggle immensely with social interactions. Thank you for reading this far. I welcome any advice or criticism. Story 5. My 38M girlfriend's 27F guy friend who proposed his love during the beginning of our relationship just popped back up after a year of no contact. She's giving him another chance at friendship. How do I navigate this? Hello, everyone. I wanted to reach out and seek some impartial advice from those who are not directly involved in my situation. My friends tend to have a rather pessimistic view of relationships, and while they are very supportive, it wouldn't be productive to consult them. Here's the situation. My girlfriend and I are approaching our 1-year anniversary, and I must say, I have felt more fulfilled and secure in this relationship than I have in any of my previous ones. She is honest, open, loving, caring, incredibly intelligent, and empathetic. More importantly, we share a connection akin to best friends. We have been nearly inseparable throughout the year, enjoying our time together immensely. Even when we are apart, we find ourselves missing each other. In light of the current circumstances, she has been completely open with me, and I am comfortable letting her take the lead on this issue. Nevertheless, I would appreciate some guidance on how to navigate this smoothly on my end. When we first began dating, my girlfriend was living with a male friend. They grew up together, and after she moved across the country, he came to join her as her roommate. This arrangement occurred before we met. I can confidently assert that there was no romantic involvement during their time living together. However, after we started dating, he became noticeably upset and passive-aggressive towards her, exhibiting behaviors such as giving her the silent treatment in her own home. I never had the chance to meet him because he would leave before I arrived and wouldn't return until I departed, even if I stayed until the early hours. I had no interaction with him whatsoever. After about a month of our relationship, things were going remarkably well, and we were evidently falling in love quickly. Then, he announced that he was moving out, and right up until the last minute, he was acting strangely. On the night of his departure, he disclosed that he was in love with her and was struggling to manage his feelings, which caused him to act out. I don't know the full details of that conversation, but I am aware that he pressured her into discussing it until around 2 a.m. She made it clear to him that she did not love him, had no romantic feelings towards him, and that a relationship was never going to happen. He ended up hastily packing his belongings and leaving the state that night. During this period, I made a conscious effort not to involve myself, as my girlfriend appeared to have the situation under control, all while showering me with love, affection, and assurances of security. The male friend is now out of the picture, having cut off contact. Fast forward 2 months. My girlfriend and I were spending time together when she pulled out her phone to show me something, and I noticed a text message conversation with him at the top of her inbox. I saw it but chose not to say anything. A few days later, we were hanging out when another text from him appeared on her phone while it was sitting on the coffee table. This time, I calmly asked if they had reconciled. She explained that he had reached out with an apology and that she was willing to put the love revelation behind them, indicating they had been having cordial exchanges for a few weeks. I read the messages, and while they seemed fairly innocuous, there was no substantial discussion about their previous conflict, just a simple apology and an attempt to brush it under the rug. I won't deny that it slightly distressed me, but once again, I trust her and respect her right to maintain her friendships, so I left the matter in her hands. It wasn't until she later mentioned that they had been video chatting to watch Game of Thrones together that I felt the need to establish a boundary. That felt overly intimate for me, and I was concerned that they hadn't adequately addressed what had transpired. At that point, she informed him that it was likely still too soon for their friendship to resume and suggested they reduce their interactions. Subsequently, he went back to no contact. Jump ahead 8 months to the present day. My girlfriend was working a night shift and sent me a screenshot of a lengthy message she received from him, which he had chosen to send around midnight. The message contained a broad apology, acknowledging that he was in the wrong and citing reasons he wouldn't disclose regarding his prior behavior. He stated that he would respect any boundaries she set and emphasized that if she wanted him to go away, he would adhere to that, reiterating this multiple times throughout his text. It came across as desperate and still lacked the depth of communication I would expect from someone genuinely seeking to mend a friendship after expressing romantic feelings. Once again, I told her that it was her decision to make. I went to bed feeling entirely secure in our relationship, albeit slightly irritated by his late-night intrusion. This morning, I asked her about her decision regarding his message. She informed me that she accepted his apology and was comfortable with the idea of being friends and communicating again, with certain boundaries. She assured me that he is not her best male friend, and that I hold that position, which gives me confidence. She conveyed to him that their friendship would not return to its former dynamics, which I genuinely believe. She reassured me that she would not be messaging him every day, and that if he attempted to, she would advise him to allow for some distance. However, I cannot shake a lingering unease, and to be honest, this individual is occupying far too much of my mental and emotional bandwidth with minimal effort on his part. I have never even met him, and I find myself doing something I thought I would never have to do in my relationship, seeking advice about it. I care for my girlfriend deeply. I am committed to making this work long-term, and I respect her freedom to cultivate her friendships more than my own feelings or preconceived notions about her social circles. I have faith in her judgment regarding this, even if I do not trust him. I am seeking nuanced advice from others on how to better manage my feelings about this situation. If he does become a more significant figure in her life, how can I learn to let go of my distrust towards him? While I wholeheartedly trust her, if she wishes to nurture this friendship, are there mental strategies I can employ to gain perspective? Should I consider getting to know him and attempting to befriend him? I'm sure he is not a bad person. He just happens to be in love with the woman I care for, which has undoubtedly complicated our initial interactions. Any guidance would be appreciated. Additionally, please do not suggest that I break up with my girlfriend. That is not an option for me. I also have a good sense for detecting dishonesty and infidelity, and I am completely confident that she is not romantically interested in this individual. She is not cheating. She is simply an incredibly considerate and caring person, even towards him.